Okay. Yeah.
Good evening po.
Evening.
Let's put ourselves in the presence of God. Let's pray. Hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you for this night, for giving us the extended energy and the focus, Lord. And makapag-review kami more, oh God. And thank you, Jesus, for giving us Ma'am Anna for discussing with us and for this opportunity na mas may matutunan pa po kami, Lord, na mas maraming topics. And let us enjoy the rest of the discussion and let us provide us with your guidance, with your wisdom, with your knowledge, oh Lord. And thank you for this night. We claim, Lord, that for the following nights, for the following days, Lord, na natitira sa amin is maging mas productive po kami sa aming pag-review, and we claim, Lord, right now that every one of us will have a successful board exam, and we will pass this exam, Lord. And we will get our license, Lord. And thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Holy Spirit. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Everyone will have a license, right? So, thank you, Sir Mian. Jen, okay na tayo, no? So, where are we? So we had this midday review session, so we will continue that. Can you remember, Jen? Saan na tayo? I think linear. Let's check. Siguro, this one, ano? This was the last slide during the midday session. So we were talking about The Linear City by Don Arturo Soria Imata. So for those who were not around earlier, so you may check the recording, okay? So here we have Tony Garnier. Tony Garnier was a noted French architect, okay? And he's also a city planner, considered a forerunner of avant-garde 20th century French architects. In 1901, after extensive study of sociological and architectural problems, Garnier formulated an elaborate solution. That is, he aimed to use architecture to create industrial utopias that would help control unchecked urban growth and keep the working classes in line. Garnier also proposed a modern linear industrial city called Une Cité Industrielle. Actually, it's been pronounced industriel, but we're not taking a an oral exam, so it's okay to pronounce it as it is. So, this Une Cité Industrielle, which was designed for about 35,000 inhabitants living in lushly landscaped residential areas. So that's that was his proposal. So he proposed that modern linear industrial city. Unlike many planners of his time, Garnier removed churches. He removed churches and law enforcement buildings um, from his city plan, believing, in line with the writings of Emile Zola, that man could rule himself. that man could rule himself. So man could rule himself in a well-organized society. So that was his belief. His concept was partially adapted in his hometown of Lyons, France. Okay, where some of his principles found practical application. The plan was founded on four main principles: functionalism, space, greenery, and high sunshine exposure. So, functionalism here meant that the design was guided by the intended use of every space, prioritizing practical needs over ornamentation. So, Garnier's basic idea included the separation of space by functional uh, by function. Okay, by function. This one, separation of space by function. Meaning zoning the city into four main categories: leisure or recreation, industry, work, and transport. By keeping these categories distinct, he hoped to create a healthier and more efficient urban environment. Lastly, his plan allowed vocational type schools, okay, to be near the industries to which they were related, making it easier for people to connect their education directly to work opportunities. So, this was Tony Garner's city industrial model. With Thomas Adams. Thomas Adams became father of urban planning in Canada. He was active in UK, USA, and Canada from 1911 to 1938. So Thomas Adams spent his career working in urban planning across these three countries. Or he formed Town Planning Institute of Canada in 1919, and so there were 117 members in most provinces, and midwife the passage of Canadian city planning law in 1921. He was instrumental in founding the Town Planning Institute of Canada in 1919, which quickly grew to that number, 117. So he also played a key role in the development and passage of Canadian city planning law in 1921. This one, Canadian city planning, 1921. Setting the groundwork for regulated urban growth in the country. Adams also adopted utilitarian approach to planning. Okay. Which was a government intervention. And so government intervention versus English common law. Let me just check this one. Because his planning philosophy emphasized a utilitarian public interest approach. So Adams believed that government should play an active role in urban planning, in contrast to the English tradition that prioritized private land ownership. So that was that number 3 meant, because it said Adams adopted utilitarian approach to planning, government intervention versus English common law, which prioritize land ownership. Okay. Adams saw a fundamental conflict between right to life versus right to property. However, Adams belonged to the British liberal tradition, not socialism or communism. So Adam deemed that town plan should provide for the proper and efficient carrying on business. He identified a core tension between the right to life, which is mm, he was talking about the right to life as public welfare and the right to property as private interests. So we need to understand that also, that while he was not a socialist or communist, he did draw from the British liberal tradition, arguing that town planning should balance these interests to enable both social welfare and economic productivity. Also, Adam encouraged development of small, well-planned towns and decentralization of industrial plants. So he was proponent of dispersing growth, supporting the creation of smaller, thoughtfully planned towns, and advocating for industrial decentralization, moving factories away from urban cores to lessen congestion and improve living conditions. He also drafted model planning legislation for provinces to adopt. So we created a template legislation for Canadian provinces, laying out best practices that influence planning law nationwide. And this included, number one, he made planning mandatory, so requiring all municipalities to engage in planning activities. Then approval of local plan by province or state after notification and hearing process. So ensuring oversight and public participation. Then approval of land subdivision required. Uh, then arbitration, compensation, and deterrent. These are mechanisms to resolve disputes and compensate affected parties. So zoning for use, height, and bulk permitted. So enabling regulation of land uses and building dimensions. Building densities to be limited. So it's controlling how intensively land could be built. Police authority in hands of planning boards, so we know what that means. So placing planning decisions with expert board, with the boards, the authorized or those who are with the planning board. So they were then called expert boards. Then executive responsibility to a professional planner. So this is good because imagine they paid attention to professional planner while in the Philippines. Yeah, it's the political color is higher, right? So I mean, if you are a mayor and at the same time you're a planner, and that would be a very good situation. But it's different because during his time, he this one required cities to have a professional oversee planning. So okay. So we are now in efficient movement city. So there are pioneers of just a moment. pioneers of transport planning. So the transport planning was belonged to in this particular movement. Okay, please remember also that it belonged to efficient movement city. That's an era. So the history of transport planning in the US was sparred by the US Federal Highway Act. So this is an important legislation, US Federal Highway Act of 1916 and Interstate Highway Act of 1956. So that was so 1956 minus 1916, 40, no? After 40 years. And so these legislative acts laid the groundwork for large-scale transportation infrastructure and were catalysts for modern transport planning efforts. In 1954, Rapkin developed transport and land use study, emphasizing that traffic is a function of land use. It was a principle applied in the Chicago and Detroit transportation plans, and this highlighted the direct relationship between urban development and transport and traffic flow. Also in 1954, Wesley Mitchell advocated that plans should be in dynamic, not static terms. He played a major role in establishing the Penn Jersey Transportation Study, which was an early urban growth simulation model that recognized the changing nature of urban systems over time. By 1961, Loudon, Wingo, and Harvey Perloff articulated that urban transportation can be viewed as basic spatial organizer of the metropolitan region. Their work demonstrated the interdependence of economics, transport, land use, and accessibility, showing how each of these factors shapes urban form and function. Moving forward, Britton Harris, in 1960, introduced a systems framework to transport planning, providing a structured approach to analyzing, solving complex transportation systems. In 1964, it should be Robert or, yeah, I will check this later. Garin and Ira Laurie published, I think Robert, and Ira Laurie published a model of metropolis through RAND Corporation, presenting the Garin-Laurie spatial allocation model or gravity model. Remember gravity model? So this provided a formula, right? For in transport model, transport planning. So I think we will reach again this type. So it was this duo, Garin-Laurie spatial allocation model, or gravity model. This model provided a scientific method for understanding and predicting how people and jobs are distributed across metropolitan regions based on the pool of different locations. So how attractive the locations are. Okay, so Britton Harris. Look at his picture. Then this is Perloff. So he was the Dean of Urban Planning. Okay. Now we go to Dr. Konstantinos A. Doxiadis. Dr. Konstantinos A. Doxiadis started equistics as the science of human settlements. This field was his attempt to systematically understand how people build, organize, and interact within different types of settlements, whether small villages or large cities. He also coined the term ecumenopolis or worldwide city. This concept described a future where urbanization would spread so widely that cities could eventually merge into a single continuous global settlement. So, um, does this does it ring a bell like a conurbation or something? Um, so among his major works, Doxiadis designed Islamabad in 1959, Rawalpindi, and Lahore in Pakistan. So these projects showcase his practical application of acoustics using scientific and rational principles to guide the master planning and expansion of cities. A key contribution of Doxiadis was his effort to state problems of modern urbanization with scientific clarity and propose a rational method of addressing those problems. He believed that the complexities of urban growth could be managed with a methodical, research-based approach. He approached town planning. He approached town planning as a science which would include contributions from planner, urban designer, sociologist, geographer, economist, demographer, politician, sociologist, um, anthropologist, ecologist, etc. So for Doxiadis, urban planning could only succeed if it drew from many fields of expertise, since cities involve every aspect of human society. Lastly, Doxiadis became town planning chief of Greater Athens and later Greek Minister of Housing and Reconstruction. These leadership roles allowed him to apply his theories on a national scale, shaping the development of both cities and policy in Greece. Another personality or thinker was Dr. Francis Stuart Chapin Jr. So he was the first to write a comprehensive textbook on urban and regional planning. His work helped set the academic foundation for the discipline, making planning more rigorous and systematic. Chapin emphasized quantitative statistic tools to study social phenomena. He proposed that we treat a town or region as an evolving system by using models and simulations. Planners could understand growth as a system that evolves in a recursive way, always taking into account how different public policies directly influence the pattern of a town's development over time. He believed that planning process should follow the cycle of human behavioral process. In other words, good planning takes into account the ways people actually live and behave rather than just relying on abstract design principles. Chapin conducted pioneering research on how residents use their city in the course of daily life, looking into both social and physical concepts of neighborhood, as well as the dynamics that shape urban growth. So his studies focus on the practical realities of how people interact with their built environment. He also had 5 goals of spatial planning, or he identified 5 goals of social planning: health, safety, convenience, economy, amenity. So Chapin also co-founded American Sociological Association and U.S. Social Science Research Council. showing his commitment to bridging urban planning and the social sciences. Okay. Planning relies more and more on positivist and empirical methods. This shift meant that urban planning increasingly tried to address the elements of uncertainty and extraneous factors in planning for human settlements. Instead of relying purely on normative ideas or top-down design, planners began to incorporate measurable data, scientific reasoning, and systematic methods. For example, P.J. Kent developed the blueprint planning and the urban general plan in 1964. So introducing a structured way to approach urban growth using plans that could be tested and revised based on evidence. And then Edwin, so let's see, Martin Mayer's son, building the middle range on Bridge for Comprehensive Planning, Albert, lagi siyang nawawala yung last ano niya, no? I think this is Albert Gothenburg, a multiple land use classification system. So, because Edwin, oh, I'm looking for, okay, this one, Banfield. Edwin, his first name is Edwin Banfield. He contributed by exploring it's not here, but he contributed by exploring the intersection of politics and planning in his work, Politics, Planning, and the Public Interest. So let me just write that one. Baka lang, Politics, Planning, and the Public Interest. Politics, Planning, and what's that? Public Interest. So, all right. And the public and that was his. So he pointed out how public interest and political realities influence planning decisions. And then there was Martin Mayer's son, who is known for building the Middle Range Bridge for comprehensive planning, where he argued that planning should bridge broad theories and practical realities using empirical data. Albert, yeah, that's really Albert Gothenburg. He developed a multiple land use classification system in 1959, which offered planners a systematic, data-driven way to classify and analyze land uses in a city. Then, regional science and regional economics okay, so these were some developments that this field both treat planning as a form of social physics. This means they look for patterns. Okay, they look for patterns, regularities, and sometimes even laws in how people interact, how economies function, and how space is used. So the goal is to explain and sometimes predict urban and regional planning or urban and regional phenomena based on data and observable trends. The concept of spatial, this one should be spatial interaction, this concept explains urban patterns as the result of push and pull factors meaning people and businesses are attracted or repelled, either attracted or repelled by certain locations, similar to physical forces like centrifugal and centripetal action. Let's remember that. So spatial modeling here refers to the use of mathematical or computational models to simulate how cities grow and change over time. Then we are back to the gravity model introduced by Robert Garin and Ira Laurie, is an influential example on the regional science and um, yeah, regional economics, whereby um, because it borrows from Newtonian, so it's a science thing. It borrows from Newtonian physics, suggesting that larger or closer cities exert a stronger pull in terms of migration, trade, and communication. So this positivist and empirical approach made planning more rigorous, evidence-based, and able to respond for the complexities of modern urban life, where uncertainty and multiple factors shape the outcome. So this is also a phenomenon. It's suburbanization in motor cities. Um, yeah, intensified, it said here, intensified with the baby boom generation. That's why we call baby boomers, or population explosion. Okay, population explosion after World War II. After World War II, there was a dramatic increase in population, often referred to as the baby boom. So that's why we call it baby boom. This surge, along with rising prosperity, led many families to seek new homes outside crowded city centers, fueling the rapid growth of suburbs. Okay, primarily driven by popularity of automobile as mode of transport, like General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler in US. Okay. So it said here, before they lost to Toyota and Nissan in the late 1990s. So they were the pioneering automobile companies before. So the car king is mentality as popularized by broadcast media. The car king is mentality. Is it correct? So the suburban lifestyle was made possible and promoted by the widespread ownership of cars. So American automakers. So as you can see here, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they dominated. Okay, and then the car is king. So that's that car is king. I think car is king mentality, not car is mentality. The car is king. Is kapalit. The car is king mentality. It encourages or it encouraged it was encouraged by media and advertising, so it reinforced the idea that owning a car was essential for daily life in the suburbs. So public resources were increasingly, where is it now? Public resources were increasingly diverted from historic inner cities to gated residential subdivisions meant for the wealthier classes. So it means that as more affluent families move outwards, government investments followed. Money that could have supported inner city renewal was often used to build roads, utilities, and services in newly developed exclusive suburban subdivisions. So city cores lost out to suburbia and exurbia in terms of capital improvement and employment. This shift meant that jobs infrastructure upgrades and business investments began to favor the suburbs, leaving downtowns and city centers with fewer opportunities and declining conditions. So inner cities look abandoned, hollow cores, or the donut shape, okay? The donut shape according to Pierce Lewis. So as a result, okay, there were empty or underutilized centers surrounded by rings of suburban development. So urban geographer Pierce Lewis described this as the donut effect, where the vitality moved outwards, leaving a void at the center. So that's why it's called donut. Now, each time I'd like to, I'm not sure if you can laugh about that. So for the rest of the 7 days, and you can eat donut, right? So just to remember that this is about suburbanization in motor cities era where according to Pierce Lewis, that happened when that happens when many inner cities develop hollow cores because it became empty or underutilized centers, and then the bulk of the development was became are developed at the periphery, and that's the donut effect, right? So okay, and now the center and leaving a void at the center. Okay, now intensification of air pollution and climate change since 1950s, as studied at Harvard University by Albert Arnold, Lafon Gore. With suburban expansion came greater dependence on cars, um, leading to more traffic, higher emissions, and significant environmental impact, including worsening air pollution and climate change. These were the topics studied in depth by researchers like Albert Arnold Gore at Harvard. So the term amorphic sprawl, okay, it refers to the low density fragmented use of land for consumptive urban purposes at a scale expanded faster than what population growth requires, and occurring along the margins of existing metropolitan areas in general amorphic or formless manner. So amorphic means formless manner. Urban scholar refer this as amorphic sprawl. So development that's spread out, that's fragmented, and not necessarily linked to real population needs. Um, Houses and businesses are scattered along the edges of cities in a loosely organized, sometimes chaotic way. So over time, this pattern means more and more houses are built farther away from the urban core that require more energy use per person and that need to be supported by piecemeal extension of urban infrastructure such as roads, sewer, power, and water, etc. So this kind of suburban growth increases the distance between homes and workplaces or services, meaning that every resident uses more energy and resources. So, yeah, cities end up extending utilities and roads farther and farther out, often at great cost. Distances became too great for walking, and this forces dependence on the automobile. Hard for old people when they can no longer drive, and hard for young people who aren't yet old enough to drive. So, yeah, and this leaves now the elderly and the young at a disadvantage, right? So that's how the narrative is telling us. increasing social isolation and dependence on others for mobility. So these are the many ways. These are some of the images that we can, so that we can understand more suburbanization or an amorphic sprawl. So these are classic examples of the suburban sprawl. It's large, low density development spreading across the landscape in every direction, often with nuclear center or structure. So you can notice how the development in the here, development here, the okay, this is the sun. Okay, it has just a moment. It stretched the up here. It stretches out in concentric circles. So do you see the concentric circles here? So and then some here was left vacant. Were left vacant. And then development again starts here, and so it caused urban sprawl. And then you can see this one also. It's showing subdivisions that eat into farmland or green spaces. So instead of compact communities, homes are spaced far apart, right? So usually accessible only by car. And these are the cases of what we call amorphic sprawl. Land is used inefficiently. Again, land is used inefficiently, and valuable rural or agricultural land is lost in the process. So here below, it showed more variations from isolated subdivisions cut off from the rest of the urban environment. So here, you see that one. Uh, okay. So to Vastra, so it was cut off from the rest of the urban environment or urban fabric to vast tracts of land cleared just for single use housing. Here. Okay, so lower left, the endless rows of identical, so you can see also here. So what did you observe here? That it consists of endless rows of identical houses, right? So in each image here, you can see the drawbacks, the main drawbacks of this pattern. So enormous land consumption for very few people per hectare. And there's also car dependency. And there's also fragmentation of the landscape, which leads to increased infrastructure costs. Also, it causes ecological disruption and loss of farmland or forest. And also, it lack mixed use or lack of mixed use or community focus. So each area is just one thing. Then houses. Okay. So this is why many urbanists refer to amorphic sprawl as an awful waste of space. Now, we're back to many people here, many thinkers. And with just few days, we don't know which questions will be asked. So it would be good also to, get some a bit of everything, right? So urban renewal movement in North America from 1950s to 70s, the urban renewal movement reshaped many Americans. American cities after World War II, especially from the 1950s through to the 1970s. And the goal was to renew or revitalize urban centers that were considered blighted, obsolete, or in decline. However, this often meant large-scale demolition, displacement, and rebuilding, usually with highways, new housing, or commercial projects. So let me see. Okay, Robert Moses. So here he is, Robert Moses. So Robert Moses is probably the most famous figure here. Because he was responsible for a huge number of public works in New York, including expressways, bridges, and urban parks. And so Moses' approach was top down. Uh, so let me go back there here so that you can see other people. So Moses' approach was top down. Entire neighborhoods could be raised to make way for roads and infrastructure with little concern for the existing communities. Then Ed Loeb played a leading role in urban renewal efforts in cities like New Haven, Boston, New York. So he promoted large-scale planning and new modernist housing, but also faced criticism for the negative effects on established communities. Yeah, Rexford, Guy Tagwell, so parang supporting role or hindi naman sila extra, di ba? So they still have otherwise hindi na sana nakalagay dito, no? But they belong to the urban renewal movement. It's just worth it to listen, right? To how they have contributed to this movement. Rexford Guy Tagwell was a planner and economist involved in the creation of Greenbelt towns as part of the New Deal and later work on planning in New York City. So New Deal is something like concept or it's a plan. So Catherine Bauer Worst, this one. Ayan. Okay. Worcester. Okay. She was a key advocate for affordable public housing. Her work influenced national housing policy and she pushed for better design and social consideration in public housing projects. Then Richard King Mellon in Pittsburgh, he backed the Pittsburgh Renaissance, which aimed to modernize Pittsburgh by clearing old neighborhoods and replacing them with new offices, civic center, and highways. Abraham Levitt and William Levitt, kapatid kaya sila sa I forget kung magkapatid or magpinsan. But they were both Levitts were developers who built Levitt towns. Okay, that was named after them, Levitt towns. Levitt towns. Okay, and yeah, these were massive suburban communities using assembly line techniques. So Levitt towns became symbols of post-war suburban growth. They were affordable, they were fast to build, but also criticized for lack of diversity and exclusionary practices. Aldo Rossi was, though Italian, included her for context. Okay, so because North America, but he belongs to, he was Italian. So he was a theorist whose ideas about urban form, memory, and the city's identity, like Kevin Lynch, league. Okay, so he belongs to that that kind of. They have the same framework because he his ideas were about urban form, memory, and the city's identity that influenced urban design debates, especially in response to sometimes destructive approaches of renewal. So urban renewal was actually a double-edged sword, like sort of that, parang ganon, and because it was about or it tackled about modernizing cities, but often at a great social cost, especially to marginalized communities. So the movement's legacy is still debated until this time because revitalizing urban areas is something like, is it really, does it, is it a better way to, to execute, or the new towns or something? So maybe it's a case to case basis or something, but it's still debated until today, how to revitalize urban areas without repeating the mistakes of the past. So, but then again, we need to go back to Robert Moses. He served, okay, most importantly, he was the leader. He led this one, the urban renewal movement. He served as park commissioner and head of the city planning commission in New York City. He oversaw major public works projects and became one of the most influential unelected public officials in American history. Between 1924 and 1968, Moses conceived and executed public works projects with a total value of about $27 billion. Okay. He was responsible for building almost every parkway, expressway, and public housing project in the New York region. His projects also included major landmarks like Lincoln Center, Shea Stadium, and the city's two World's Fairs. In addition to transportation and civic buildings, Moses also focused on what's this? Let me see. He also focused on urban green space. So he built hundreds of new city playgrounds, and ordered the planting of 2 million trees. So it was attributed to Robert Moses. This yeah, like achievements or accomplishments within the region. So 2 million trees throughout the city. So I hope we can also settle about the definition of terms, because this will remain as one of the important aspects of urban planning. So urban renewal in the US began as a federal program under the Comprehensive Housing Act of 1949. So the goal was to help communities improve and redevelop areas that had become outworn, physically deteriorated, that has become unsafe or poorly planned. Okay, so through urban renewal, communities are able to realize specific capital projects or public assets. So this means they can fund parks, streets, and streetscape improvements, park and plazas, greenways, community centers, and facilities. Investments that likely wouldn't happen without such a program. So urban renewal finances intensives for private investments to create jobs, revitalize neighborhoods, and provide a full range of housing options. So I was reading this one. And so the basic idea, so let me read this first. The basic idea behind urban renewal is that future tax revenues will pay for revitalization. So the city government draws line around an area, meaning the urban renewal boundary. The urban renewal boundary and identifies which improvements should happen there. So to pay for the projects, the city issues urban renewal bonds. Okay, as property values in the area rise due to new investment, property tax also increase, and the rise in property tax revenues, tax increment is then used to pay off the bonds. This approach is called tax increment financing. And it has become the most common method of paying for improvements and in urban renewal area. So let me just check this one. So did you understand that one? That so it's called the urban renewal plan. So these are important terminologies here. So the financing was through urban renewal bonds to pay for the identified improvements. So they parang ano, it was they leveraged that so the property values increase in the area because of the new investments. So they leverage on the increases in the increase in tax revenues, in the property tax revenues. So they called that tax increment. And that was the one that was used to pay off the urban renewal bonds. So please remember all these terminologies. And also this one, gentrification. It's a mode, okay? It's a mode of urban renewal which entails upscaling previously blighted areas to attract new business and new occupants. The elite and their money would be motivated to return to the inner city. So it's meant to revitalize blighted waterfronts and inner cores of industrial city which had been previously abandoned by the elite and consequently invaded by the urban poor. Over time, so gentrification tends to result in yappification, such as the development of condominium clusters and in social exclusion of lower classes. So, okay. Um, just a moment. So we can see here, gentrification meant social exclusion. Large-scale demolition, so these are the characteristics, large-scale demolition of slums and black neighborhoods in the 1960s. So before, urban urban renewal through gentrification was initially called racist and segregationists. That was the primarily or the original, you know, how they viewed gentrification before, and it and contributed to the civil rights protests led by Dr. Martin Luther King. So James Baldwin, do you know James Baldwin? So they called urban renewal as Negro removal. So this is a very important part of history of the U.S. And according to Manuel Castells, gentrification was driven by the combined influence of gays, bohemians, hipsters, artists, and yappies who wanted upscale neighborhoods with higher real estate values suited to their lifestyle. So this was the concept of yappification that uh, fit their that tried to fit with their lifestyle. So then there were also some viewpoints on gentrification. It's that is often centerless and soulless as against new urbanism, which is centered on reviving some traditions. So gentrification has focused on comfort, convenience, while new urbanism is focused on community. Just a moment. Let's go to still about I'll leave this up to you. Social protest movement and the rise of advocacy or activist or equity planning. that okay, large scale. So there are some keywords here that we need to also remember. Um, it gave rise to the advocacy or activist or equity school of planning and the applied disciplines of community development and conflict management. So it may be asked in the board exam. So what are the applied disciplines connected with with gentrification, so community development and conflict management? And so in the US, politicians like Barack Obama and some others, they, yeah, community development, or there were some terminologies that when Americans they would usually refer to them as populist or something, and it's because of this, because history provided that particular stereotyping of politicians who are indeed engaged in community development. So, second bullet, advocacy planning school asserts that planning process, you take the side of the poor, the last, the least, and the lost. I think few days ago I also made mention about this one, the poor, the last, and then we will encounter them again, these terminologies. So, later, because parang, andito na naman yung advocacy planning. But I think I already finished this one. So again, here in advocacy or activist or equity planning, um, yeah, it emphasizes action, activism, community mobilization. Okay, so community development, or I forgot. So it should be also community mobilization. This is a terminology that stereotypes politicians and other leaders, social leaders in the US as activists and populists. Um, so this approach here, has pushed social policy discussions from closed door negotiations into the public arena and forcing governments and private institutions to contend with the demands and voices of organized community groups. Here, you can see here. I will skip this one because I already finished that. So new urbanism or neo-traditionalism. Okay, this new urbanism, still like an extension, or it was also called the era of neo-traditionalism. So we have the first one in this particular era. Jane Jacobs is very famous because she was instrumental in challenging post-war planning paradigms and promoting what became known as new urbanism. Okay, so that's Jane Jacobs. Um, she emphasized, she emphasized walkable, human scale neighborhoods, mixed uses, and vibrant street life. So, in the Philippines, we call it like a Changi sort of thing. So, that's in contrast to the automobile-centric, single-use zoning that dominated mid-20th century planning. So, Jacobs was outspoken against the widespread demolition of established neighborhoods in the name of urban renewal. She argued these top-down interventions not only failed to solve urban problems, but actively harmed social networks, local economies, and the unique character of communities. She wrote the book entitled The Death and Life of Great American Cities, one of the most influential books in planning here. So Yeah, many times this was asked in the board exam. Her book, s- um, her her seminal work dissected why traditional planning models were um, failing cities, highlighting the vitality that comes from dense, mixed use, and diverse neighborhoods. So the book's critiques of slum clearance and modernist planning became foundational texts for generations of urbanists and planners. So in her book, The Economy of Cities in 1969, Jane Jacobs asserts that diversity in geographic concentration, not geographic specialization, spars urban growth. So it is the diversity of geographically proximate industries that promotes innovation and growth, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so as measured by employment, industries grow slower in cities where they are heavily overrepresented, but city diversity promotes growth as knowledge spills over industries. So Jacobs theorized that cities thrive not because they specialize, but because a mix of industries fosters creativity, adaptability, and economic resilience. So Jacobs also theorized that diverse urban economies generate more opportunities for innovation and cross-pollination of ideas. She was also one of the earliest critics, one of the earliest critics of urban design that prioritize automobiles. Um, Wide roads, bus parking lot, and super blocks over human needs. So that was her critique. Jacobs persistently asked whether planners were serving the life of the city or simply the convenience of vehicles. So that was the question. Okay. Um, Jacobs advocated dense mixed use. Neighborhoods and frequently cited New York City's Greenwich Village as an example of a vibrant urban community. Okay, please remember Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village embodied Jacob's ideals, which that is a neighborhood with a mixture of housing, shops, businesses, and public spaces, supporting a diverse, engaged, and resilient urban population. Okay, so for Jacobs, a successful urban area is one where a variety of activities, living, working, shopping, socializing, a car side by side, bringing people out at all hours and ensuring safety, interaction, and economic vitality. And that's why here she prescribed that neighborhood should have, it said here, mixed functions and therefore mixed land uses to ensure that people were there for different purposes and different time schedules, but using many facilities in common, so like a public spaces. So Jacobs also other exponents of new urbanism. So here, like mm, like disciples, or how do they call those followers? So they were Andres Duany, Elizabeth Plater Zybert, Leon Kerr, Rob Kerr. I will just read so that baka sakaling maalala or baka sakaling maibigay sa exam. Daniel Solomon, Stefanos Polizoy. So these were other exponents of new urbanism. So Jacob's work laid the intellectual foundation for other architects and planners who became key advocates of new urbanism. So these figures developed also new urbanist principles and implemented them in contemporary planning and development projects worldwide. So again, here, new urbanism emerge as again. So it emerge as the response to the loss of community identity in modern urban planning. So its advocates believe that cities and towns should be designated with a strong. So these are the characteristics so that it it also summarize here the characteristics because okay, movement in architecture and settlements planning, which so to revive. Okay, this is important in the new urbanism principle, the lost art, reviving the lost art of placemaking. So one of the different aims or objectives. So it new urbanism also abhors, okay, the pattern of suburbanization and amorphic sprawl. So we've I've discussed that because suburbs are anomic or anomy.
Paantay lang po, nag-reconnect lang po si Ma'am Ana. Thank you.
Okay, let me share again. I'm back. Apologies. Right, right. Um, here. Okay. We're here. So, Jen, can you hear me? So, where am I? Six to build inner city neighborhoods around important traditions and core values. Naririnig na ako, no? So, reorders the built environment into the form of complete cities, towns, villages, and neighborhood multi-use. So it's also it has festive atmosphere, ethnic settings, bazaars. So ito yung parang Changi bazaars and Changi street concerts, pedestrianization, fosters informal human interaction that revitalize the community. So let's go to the next thinker, Rachel Lewis
Wala pong
Carson.
nakikita. Ay, excuse me po, ma'am.
Ah,
Wala pong slides na nakikita, ma'am.
okay. So, get kaya na? Screen. I started this. How about this? Kita na?
Wala pa po, ma'am.
Dapat. How about now? Wala pa din? Sige. I'll repeat the process. Okay, stop share. I'll share again. Share screen. Start broadcast. Okay. How about this?
Yes po, ma'am. Okay na po, ma'am.
Okay. So Rachel Lewis Carson she's very important in and of city plan because she was the first modern eco-feminist who sparked the environmental movement in the US. She is widely recognized for as a pioneering figure in environmentalism and ecofeminism. Her advocacy challenged both industrial and societal norms, highlighting the intersection of environmental degradation and the marginalization of voices, especially those of women, in public policy debates. So Carson's groundbreaking book, Silent Spring, 1962, documented how widespread pesticide use, particularly DDT, that led to significant declines in bird populations and threatened the balance of natural ecosystems. The haunting image of a spring without a bird song or without bird song became a powerful symbol for the unforeseen consequences of chemical pollution. So, Carson explained biomagnification using compelling scientific evidence showing how chemicals like DDT do not break down easily in the environment. Instead, they accumulate in living organisms and become more concentrated as they are passed along the food chain, ultimately affecting top predators, including humans. So, her advocacy work and public testimony inspired the creation of landmark institutions and legislation for environmental protection. So Carson's influence can be seen in the establishment of regulatory agencies such as the USEPA, in 1970. So U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So he led that. She advocated to her advocacies led to the formation of USEPA. So she also what else? She also influence, or her influence also can be seen in the legal frameworks that require environmental assessments for projects that could harm nature. She also provided expert testimony to lawmakers, clearly explaining how DDT, what's DDT? Okay, so she explained that one, that how it caused thinning of eggshells in birds of prey, such as eagles and falcons, resulting in reproductive failure and population and crushing of population. So her arguments were grounded in rigorous science and careful documentation. Carson's untimely death meant she did not witness the ban on DDT or the full impact of her environmental movement. However, her legacy continued to inspire generations of scientists, activists, and policymakers. In 1992, a panel of distinguished Americans declared Rachel Carson's Silent Spring as one of the most influential books of the last century. It was a transformative effect on environmental awareness, science policy, and public discourse, reshaping how Americans and the world approach issues of pollution and ecological health. So she was considered a superwoman. So yeah. Who almost single-handedly alerted Americans to the dark side of industrial technology. She, with clear, persuasive writing and steadfast dedication, Carson brought hidden dangers of unregulated chemical use into public view, galvanizing a movement that demanded accountability and protection for people and the environment. So we have few slides. He was the first modern here. Okay, so first modern environmental planner who introduced ecological planning primarily through map overlays that graphically integrate environmental information. So he was credited for with pioneering that. So he also it was, or everyone knows here that it was a technique that layers different environmental data. So we have here all of this one. Okay, plano. So overlaying the soil type, topography, hydrology, vegetation on transparent maps. So that's my generation, because noon we were doing that. We were just using acetate, so up to 5 at least acetate, and we overlay that manually, no GIS. Wala pang GIS noon. And so this method allows planners to visually analyze and create complex ecological relationships, guiding more informed and sustainable planning decisions. So constraints mapping, sieve analysis, multidisciplinary suitability analysis to identify land development constraints. So it was called ano pa rin tawag namin doon, like map sieve analysis, constraint mapping and sieve analysis, to systematically identify areas that are unsuitable or less suitable for development. Okay, and then Ian McHarg, recognizing the need to formally assess the environmental consequences of development. McHarg was an early advocate for environmental impact assessments. And so EIS became a critical component of project planning and policy making, requiring a comprehensive review of potential impacts before any major public or private project could proceed. He wrote the book Design with Nature in 1969. He won U.S. Medal of Arts in 1990. So that book, Design with Nature, set a new standard for environmental planning by advocating for the integration of ecological science into design practice. The book became a leading or a foundational text in landscape architecture, planning, and environmental design. So his achievements were recognized with the U.S. National Medal of Arts in 1990. Challenging the modernist mantra that form follows function, Macquarie insisted that good design must also honor ecological processes and the limits imposed by the natural landscape. He believed that design should work with and not against the environment, resulting in more harmonious and resilient communities. So, according to Ian Macquarie, the task of design was given to those engineers who, by instinct and training, were especially suited to gauge and scar the landscape and city without remorse. So he was critical of conventional engineering approaches that prioritize efficiency or cost at the expense of ecological and aesthetic values. He argued that past urban development often disregarded natural systems, leading to unnecessary environmental destruction and unsustainable cities. So his work called for a new ethic where planners and designers act as stewards of the environment, shaping development to fit within the limits and opportunities of nature. So, okay, I'd like to, so here, okay, 6 evils of industrial cities. I leave that up to you now. I need to, we already know 1, 2, 3, 4, but how about number 5? Number 5 is leapfrog development or checkerboard development. So they are actually the same. So they mean the same thing. That these are disconnected pockets of development, often by bypassing available land. So that's leapfrog development, like a frog leaping. Okay. So causing inefficient land use, make infrastructure provision costly, and leave vacant or underused land in between. So here, number 6, economic polarization resulting in mass poverty and urban blindness. I think this is easy. So, like megalopolis. I need to repeat this one. That this was a term by Jean Gottman. Okay. Double T, double N. So, a megalopolis refers to a sprawling metropolitan area, with a population exceeding 10 million people. I repeat, population exceeding 10 million people. Hyper urbanization or over urbanization, so it's the same, means that this occurs when the rapid growth of urban populations outpaces the capacity of both natural resources and local governments to provide essential services. As a result, cities struggle to address the needs of their residents. Urban primacy, that one, urban the phenomenon of urban primacy. This is when a single city dominates the population, resources, and economic activity of a country, which is common in many developing countries. So we have, we have Manila, right? So such dominance is often due to historical or political factors resulting in significant economic and social disparities. So, urban primacy leads to the polarization of resources and opportunities, making the main metropolis vastly more developed compared to the rest of the country. So this creates challenges in balance, national development, and equitable resource distribution. So, what is false urbanization? It's rapid. It is the rapid, often unexpected migration of rural populations into cities without a corresponding growth in jobs, infrastructure, or services. So, urban industries and firms are not able to absorb all the new migrants, especially those lacking skills or education. So, it leads to sprawling informal settlements, urban unemployment, underemployment, and persistent poverty. So this phenomenon can affect both large and small cities. Bottom line, urban growth, when accompanied by adequate economic opportunities and planning, does not automatically translate to improved living conditions, sometimes worsening the social and physical environment of cities. So, hyperurbanization, we already have hyperurbanization. So, I think I mentioned about hyperurbanization that refers to the extremely rapid population growth in, like for example, in these metropolitan areas, often outpacing the ability of urban infrastructure and services to keep up. Premature urbanization is, it is sometimes called forced urbanization or premature urbanization. It occurs when rural land is converted for urban use before the actual population or demand exists. So this leads to irreversible change in land use, often resulting in urban sprawl. So the phrase, if you build it, they will come. So back in 1989, it was the catch line from the movie Field of Dreams by Kevin Costner. So if you build it, they will come. I think this was also given in, I think it was during my time that this one was given as a board question. So urban infrastructure and subdivisions are established even though the intended users or residents are not yet present. So these are yeah, this explains the phenomenon of premature urbanization. So the key problem now is premature or forced urbanization is closely linked to uncontrolled urban sprawl, leading to inefficient land use, infrastructure wastage, and potential negative environmental impacts. So it's closely linked. Then here, okay, this is small anyway, so we will just this one only. Okay. Eco-anarchism is the anti-big city philosophy, return to micro-identities as a spatial strategy. Eco-anarchism. Within this phenomenon or this philosophy, there are key concepts. Okay, this one, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Exorbia is it advocates return to village life, arguing that big cities are too expensive and struggle to sustain community bonds. So technology, like when we say ICTs, right? ICTs allows people to remain connected even when living far apart. Like no need for cities, just dispersed residences. So that's Exarbia. Agarbia proposes replacing suburb with small self-sustaining villages known as the agarbs, agarbs on the urban edge. So these villages interact with cities for education, work, and cooperation, but retain their local identity and values. Unlike commuter towns, they are less dependent on motor vehicles and more self-reliant. Micropolis envisions cities with fewer than 50,000 residents, maintaining community values and agrarian roots while embracing modern technology and creativity. So these are clusters of innovative, knowledge-based small cities. I think it's easy to remember. While Agropolis by John Friedman, according to John Friedman, it focuses on building networks among small towns, okay, cities and villages within a territory using local demand to sustain themselves. So this philosophy resists urban gigantism and insisted values localized. So that's the main objective of all this. It also it values human scale, interconnected communities that leverage technology but prioritize local autonomy, identity, and ecological sustainability. So I hope you will remember Exarbia, Agarbia, Micropolis, and Agropolis. So, okay, we want to skip this one. And the last one is okay. So, what makes a city different as a concluding part of this is because we still have regional planning in this series. So, spatial proximity, I leave this to you. That, okay, spatial proximity, infrastructure, historical association, concentration of socio-economic activities, centers of creativity, social practices in the built environment, and many more, right? Depends on where you're located, depends on the your comparative advantage as a city, and many more. So we will tomorrow, so we are okay with this one. Jen will send this on the GC for measure retrieval. Okay, so thank you for tonight, and then good luck again for your extra readings and extra or going back to all our recordings.